Welcome back once again to Viper Bites, and we're trying something a little bit different here. We are giving you a Week 6 preview, starts and stits edition here. We're going to have to go through each every matchup, kind of break it down real quick, try and keep it under 20 minutes. Don't know how long it's going to take, first time trying this. So without being said, make sure you're checking out the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. We go live to answer your starts and sits questions, as well as preview each and every game of the week, waiver wires, bold predictions, and of course, like I said, your questions. That also being said, make sure you check out fantasypoints.com. Save 10% off that subscription by using promo code 21Vipers10. You want to know about stats and facts? Fantasy Points is the one-stop shop that you need to get involved in there to win your fantasy leagues. That being said, again, here we go. We're going to start off first game of the week, Jacksonville, Miami. Right now, this is going to be fun. Miami is actually favored right now, about 2.5 to 3 points right now. Over-under is set at 47, depending on which, if you're using DraftKings there. And here we go. We're going to break it into Davonte Parker. He is not making the trip to London there to face the Jaguars. Neither is Xavier Howard. Both these guys are going to be held back. Preston Williams, groin injury. He's questionable. Jacoby Brissett looks like he's going to be sitting on the back end here as Tua Tagovailoa. He's going to be getting that start there. And you know what? If you're the first time tuning in, my English is no good. Okay, we'll go with that right off the get-go. For Jacksonville, you know what? Marvin Jones did not participate on Wednesday, got some veteran rest, but he was good to go Thursday and Friday. As far as that goes, Miles Jack looks like he's the only Jaguar who's going to miss this game. He is out for sure. And everyone else got questionable tags, which means they're like you and I, they're day-to-day. So they're going to be going at it. Now, looks like Tua is going to return to action this week. You're not starting him. Even if it's the Jaguars, you're going to give him a week to see what goes on. Davonte Parker not making that trip. So maybe this is time for Preston Williams to step up once again last week. 3 catches, 60 yards, 5 targets. He looked good. Jalen Waddle, expect him to do his thing. Will Fuller, he's still on IR. Mike Gesicki, you know what? Fire him up. If you're looking for a tight end 2, I think he's going to flirt as a tight end 1 overall this week. Crack that top 12. Myles Gaskin. Boy, what do you do with him right now? I think you kind of have to start him this week. It's Jacksonville. It's a good matchup here. When we look at it, the Jaguars are giving up about 3.7 yards per carry, but they are giving up the 5th fewest catches per game to running backs at 3.8. But it's still Myles Gaskins, and they are giving up the 2nd most touchdowns to running backs so far this season with 9. Now, over on Jacksonville, you're starting James Robinson. You're always starting James Robinson. Even Urban Meyer can't stop James Robinson. So you're going to get him in your lineup. Trevor Lawrence, I don't trust. Marvin Jones maybe as a flex peel. Laviska Shenault, is it me or was he kind of outplayed by Jamal Agnew last week? I can't trust Laviska Shenault either this week. So you're firing up basically James Robinson, Marvin Jones as a flex option. And then again with the Dolphins, Mike Gesicki is a tight end 2 there. I think Preston Williams has some flex appeal for you, as does Jalen Waddle. Now, our next matchup we're going to get into here, we're going to try and move around, try and give you as much information as possible. The next game we're going to get into is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Carolina Panthers. Now, when we pull up the numbers here, quick little review here. When we look at it, you've got the Vikings, who are about 2.5-point favorites right now. The over-under is set about 45. Game's going down at Bank of America Stadium in Carolina. So we'll see how this shapes out. Now, Delvin Cook looks like he's going to be back. Alexander Mattison is going to be sitting on the pine here a little bit, so his value has now diminished somewhat. Adam Thielen was limited with a foot injury. He's probable. Justin Jefferson, same thing, limited again today with an ankle. Expect him to play as well. For the Carolina Panthers, Christian McCaffrey, Shaq Thompson are both out. Christian McCaffrey, you're going to have to wait another week for him to make an impact, which means we get one more week of Chuba Hubbard. Now, we'll get to the Vikings. When we talk about those for Chuba Hubbard, you're going to start him. You have to put him in your lineup. He's done very well in his opportunities to get some playing time there. So, yeah, you're going to fire him up, probably looking at him as more of a, let's call it a flex RB2. I can't quite trust him as an RB1. And you know what? When we look at what Deandre Swift did against everyone here, you know, there's an opportunity for the Panthers to really try and make a statement here against the Vikings. Deandre Swift put up 17 carries, 104 yards, 104 yard scrimmage yards against this very same Vikings defense. Now, Sam Darnold looks like he's New York Jets Gotham. Darnold the last couple games, he struggled against the Eagles. He's got about 4.8 yards per attempt there. I can't trust him there. I know he was flirting with top 5, top 10 QB rating earlier as far as fantasy points are concerned. He's no longer there. DJ Moore last week fell below that 15-point fantasy points standard. You're still going to put him up against the Vikings, even though the Vikings are giving up the 12th fewest fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position at 36.4. Robbie Anderson, still not going to trust Robbie Anderson. He hasn't reached 10 fantasy points or 50 yards so far this season since that 57-yard touchdown in the opener. And like I said, the Vikings are giving up about 14.2 yards per reception to wide receivers so far this year. Now, on the flip side, you're going to start Justin Jefferson. You're going to start Adam Thielen. I feel comfortable even starting Kirk Cousins here because when we look at Jeremy Chin, who's going to be asked to do a lot of things, he hasn't been tackling well. He hasn't been very good in coverage. And when we look at the Panthers, they've given up 23 fantasy points to both Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts in the last 2 weeks, even though neither of them really hit like 200 yards passing. So I think Kirk Cousins has an opportunity to improve on that number and still give you 23 to 25 fantasy points. So you're going to definitely put him in, especially in 2 QB leagues. I may even roll with him as a QB1 this week. We'll see how I feel about that a little bit later. Now, Justin Jefferson, he's got 18 fantasy points and 6+ catches in 4 straight games. He posted his second 100-yard game of the season last week. And when you take a look at it, Devonte Adams, whoa, we're getting way ahead of myself here. Devonta Smith, who is not Devonte Adams, he posted 7 catches for 77 yards last week when facing Carolina. Adam Thielen, he hasn't been good the last couple of weeks. We talked about all he does is score touchdowns. Well, he's failed to find that end zone in the last couple of games here, and it really hurts his value, really limits that ceiling. He's not quite where Justin Jefferson needs to be. Adam Thielen, I guess you could do worse as a wide receiver 2, worse as a wide receiver 3. So you're probably going to put him in your lineup, but just temper those expectations a little bit. Amari Cooper, when they played against the Vikings, he put up 3 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown. Ty Conklin, won't trust him, won't start him. I mean, we're in bye weeks here. You know, Kyle Pitts is on a bye week as well as some others. Maybe you're forced to start him. Maybe he's on the waiver wire. Maybe you can grab him there. But the Panthers are giving up the 13th fewest fantasy points to tight ends this year at about 10.9. Delvin Cook sat out last couple games with that ankle injury. He looks like he's ready to go. So if Delvin Cook is healthy and he's ready to go, you play Delvin Cook. It's really that simple. Alexander Mattison, you have to put him on the bench right now. As long as Delvin Cook's playing, you got to kind of limit Alexander Mattison and kind of temper those expectations a little bit there when it comes to him. Now, as far as some of these other matchups, we're going to keep going. I'm going to give you each and every one a quick little synopsis of it. Heading over to Washington, where the Chiefs are heading to Washington to play on the Washington football team. In a game in which the Chiefs are favored to win by 7, we have an over-under set about 54.5. You're starting Tyreek Hill. You're starting Travis Kelce. You're starting Patrick Mahomes. These are all guys you know you're starting. Now, looking at this injury report, Tyreek Hill was limited. He's going to be ready to go. Chris Jones, the defensive tackle, all-pro kind of guy, he is out. So there's going to be an opportunity maybe to run up the middle against these guys, against the Chiefs there. So Antonio Gibson, keep that in mind here. Now, for the Washington football team, Antonio Gibson was limited. Curtis Samuel, he is out. He did not participate at all this week. Diami Brown, he's questionable. Here's one for you. Now, on Friday, Terry McLaurin did not participate. Hopefully it's nothing. It sounds like a hamstring. He is questionable. So keep an eye on that as we get closer and closer to Sunday's kickoff. Now for the Chiefs, like I said, you're starting everyone. There's no questions about it. Now, when it comes to Daryl Williams is an interesting one for me because for some reason you think Jet McKinnon is going to factor in on this offense somehow, some way. Williams had 5 carries, 27 yards, 3 catches for 18 receiving yards there on 5 targets, 43% on the snaps in week 5. Definitely outplayed the aforementioned Jerick McKinnon here when we look at things. So we don't really know what to do here. I think there's better options than Daryl Williams. I know he was the waiver wire guy that people are going out there and they were getting. I've heard, do you start Daryl Williams or do you start Khalil Herbert? You start Herbert, in my opinion. You know you're going to get the volume there from Herbert. I can't say the same thing about Daryl Williams because we've seen the Chiefs have some success running the ball with Clyde Edwards-Helaire in there. We've seen Daryl Williams get those touchdowns. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case this week. I think they're going to put the ball in the air, and I think that's how they're going to score. Now, as far as Washington's concerned, we know that Antonio Gibson is playing with that stress fracture in the shin. That's definitely limiting him. He's had a little bit of a sluggish start. A lot of us in the industry really were touting Antonio Gibson to start the year. He's battled through it. He's last week he's been getting some points for us. He's been doing okay. You got to put him in your lineup still and hope for that big play like he had there a couple weeks ago. Now, J.D. McKissic, he's an interesting one for me. I think you start him as a flex because I really do believe that Washington is going to be playing from behind, trying to play catch up and trying to put points on the board. And J.D. McKissic has been that guy for Washington that they've put in their third down package, put in their 2-minute offense. I think Washington's going to have to go in their 2-minute offense 2 minutes into this game. So start J.D. McKissic. Tyler Heineke, McKissic, you know what I mean? McKissic, my Heineke, whatever you want to say it. I think you've got to put him in there. I know he had a week 5 game last week where he didn't really do a whole heck of a lot there, but you know what? Against the Chiefs and this Chiefs defense, you can take advantage of that. I think Heineke is a very sneaky QB2 this week. Terry McLaurin, man, that hamstring injury really has me concerned. Even if he's healthy, I don't know if I can trust him, but you know what? You really have no other options but to put your studs out there in the situation. Devonta Smith back in week 4 went for 7 for 122 against the Chiefs. We've seen how the Bills passed the ball at will against them last week. So, you know, you got to start whatever wide receivers are available in this game, and you got to play them. And Terry McLaurin is definitely that guy. Logan Thomas is obviously out. Ricky Seals-Jones played 99% of the snaps with Logan Thomas out of the lineup. He's a guy to keep an eye on. Dawson Knox last week there, 3 catches, 117 for 1 touchdown. I think he could be a very sneaky play. Even going back to Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, they combined for 11 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown back in week 4. So Ricky Seals-Jones is a very sneaky tight end starter for me this week. I prefer him over lots of these tight ends that we talked about, like Conklin in the Minnesota game. I'll take Ricky Seals in this one here. I think it's going to be a good play. Now we're going to go to a little bit of a cat fight here in Detroit, where we've got the Cincinnati Bengals heading to Detroit as a 3.5-point favorite with that over-under set at about 47. You know what I mean? We look at this throat, Joe Burrow's throat. He's ready to go. Joe Mixon, he's questionable. He's good to go, I think. And flipping over to the other side there, Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson, they were all limited this week. Trey Flowers, the outside linebacker, edge rusher, he was limited. Keep an eye on these guys' stats. I think DeAndre Swift's going to play, so you're going to start him. You start DeAndre Swift. It's really, there's no hidden secret about it. DeAndre Swift has been that guy in fantasy football this year, and he's been that guy for the Detroit Lions. He has seen the highest snap shares in each of the last 2 games, 73, 74, so they're giving him more and more opportunities. Jamal Williams has been injured, and if you look at what the Bengals did, they gave up 109 scrimmage yards to both Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon last week. Now, Jared Goff, oh boy, this is not a good matchup for him, in my opinion, here. When you look at how it's all going to shape out, you can't start Jared Goff. I don't even know why you'd even consider him, so we're just going to move on. TJ Hawkinson, you know what? He came out first 2 weeks, 16 catches, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns. Since then, he hasn't done a whole heck of a lot. He's got 8 catches, 74 yards on 13 targets these last 3 games, and he's only running routes about 85% of Jared Goff's dropbacks. So he's a guy for me that I'm really kind of hesitant on playing. But do you have any better options? You're probably still putting him in that lineup. Quintus Cephas, no thank you. Tyrell Williams is obviously on IR. Cephas, sorry. So there's a reason why you're not playing Cephas. It's because he's on IR as well. Everyone that can catch a pass is on IR right now. And basically the lines are rolling out there. Khalif Raymond, Kadarrell Hodge, Trinity Benson. Yeah, no thank you. Pass. That's a hard pass for me, Bob. Now for the Bengals, Joe Burrow, absolutely start him. I think he could be a top 5 quarterback this week. You look at what the Lions have given up, and yeah, it's pretty simple. Only one passer has failed to reach that multiple touchdowns in these games. That was Kirk Cousins. He threw for 275 and 1. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, fire them all up. I don't think Detroit has an answer for Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase is having an unreal rookie season right now in every statistical category. T. Higgins, I think, gets a nice little bounce back the week this time. Although I should say the line's limited Adam Thielen to 2 catches for 40 yards and Allen Robinson for 3 for 63 in back-to-back weeks. So I guess that's always there. And Tyler Boyd, you know what? Higgins came back to the lineup. Boyd seemed to be forgotten. So we'll see if maybe Joe Burrow remembers that Tyler Boyd's out there, because I really like this for Tyler Boyd being that slot receiver against the Lions, even though the Lions are giving up the 6th fewest catches per game to wide receivers this year, and that's about 11.4 per game. Now, when we move along here, we got lots of games to cover, and we're covering them really quick. We got the LA Rams, New York Football Giants. This is, for me, if you're playing a survivor, this is the Rams game all the way through. They are currently favored by 9 points. There's a 48.5 point over-under right now. I think that the Los Angeles Football Rams are going to get about 35 of those points. So it's going to get ugly. I think it's going to get ugly quickly. I don't think the Giants are going to be able to stop the run. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with the injury report when you look at the Rams. Everyone is probable, so we're good to go. Daniel Jones looks like he's good to go. Saquon Barkley is out, so you're probably going to start Davonte Parker. You're not going to like it because the matchup is tough for him, especially against the Rams defense. Sterling Shepard, we heard on Friday, he is good to go. Kenny Golladay is not good to go. He is out. Kadarius Toney looks like he's going to play, and Darius Slayton is questionable. He was limited in practice on Friday. Even if he does play, he's been questionable all year. I wouldn't start him, period. Now, a quick little walkthrough. Matt Stafford, absolutely start him. Robert Woods, he came back big last week. You know what I'm saying? He pretty much doubled his production, though we saw previously. He got 15 for 172, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, you're going to fire up Robert Woods. Of course, you're going to fire Cooper Kupp. He's the wide receiver 2 right now as far as fantasy is concerned. Against Seattle, he had 7 catches for 92 yards. He's had double-digit targets in multiple games there, 5+ catches, 60+ yards in every game this season. Even when you look at the matchup last week, CeeDee Lamb, the Cowboys, he hung 4 catches for 84 yards and 1 touchdown in this matchup. Now, where it gets interesting for me, can you start Van Jefferson or Deshaun Jackson as a flex, as a sneaky play? Probably not. They're probably guys I wouldn't trust. When you look at the Giants have given up the 16th fewest fantasy points, 37.5 to wide receivers this season. So I would probably just limit this to Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. Tyler Higbee, he's ran routes on 76% of Stafford's dropbacks. Again, tight end position is very underwhelming right now. You're probably going to be forcing yourself to start him. And Darrell Henderson, you're probably going to fire him up because I think the game script is going to be very favorable towards him with the advantage. Now, I mentioned Devontae Booker. The way the running backs are going down, you're probably firing him up with Barkley out. Keep an eye on, see if Gary Brightwell actually gets a touch this game. He didn't last week. Daniel Jones, he could be a sneaky quarterback flex based on what kind of value he's going to give you in the run game. I think he's going to be scrambling a lot. I think there's going to be an opportunity for him to pick up yards, especially late in the game in garbage time. Garbage time points still count as points. Sterling Shepard, PPR, first game back. I would like to hold off on him. But I know in a couple of leagues, I'm starting him where I need the points, and I'm going to hope that he can get 10 catches for 40 yards. I don't know what he's going to do. That's still 14 points for me, so I'm going to trust him there. Kadarius Toney, if he is healthy, if he's on the field, you're starting him because of what he's done the last 2 weeks. Evan Ingram, he had his best. He's coming off his best game in Week 5 against the Cowboys, and he still did not hit double digits as far as fantasy points, so I'm still not trusting Evan Ingram in my lineups. It's really that simple. Now, as far as some other matchups, we're already coming up on 18 minutes. We've only gone through a handful of these games. For the Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, we know that this is going to be a good matchup. It always is. When you talk about the NFC North, you've got the Packers who are favored by 6. The over-under set is 44.5. I'm firing up Aaron Jones. I'm firing up Devonte Adams. These are guys you have no question about. Robert Tonyan, I'm probably not playing. I haven't seen nothing out of Robert Tonyan all season. And Aaron Rodgers, you know what? Dare I say it? I think you're sitting Aaron Rodgers. I think there's many options out there that are much better than Aaron Rodgers. Now, same can be said for Justin Fields. I don't even know if he's thrown the ball more than 20 times in a game, so he's sitting on my bench for me this week. Damian Williams, he's out with COVID and whatever else. Fire up Khalil Herbert. I think he's going to have lots of opportunity to run. I know the matchup's not the greatest for him because the Packers are pretty good at stopping the run, but you're putting him in there. Allen Robinson was limited in practice on Friday. Darrell Mooney was a full go after being limited the 2 previous days. Still can't trust either one of these wide receivers. I may flex Allen Robinson, but I don't know which one's going to be Justin Fields' guy. 2 weeks ago was Darnell Mooney. We were hoping last week would be Allen Robinson. I think it's more comfortable that Justin Fields gets under center, the better the opportunity that we'll see either one of these guys step up. Now, when we move along here to our next matchup, it's going to be the Houston Texans against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, we've finally seen Jonathan Taylor get right last week, which is fantastic for fantasy managers. We've got the Colts favored by 10. The over-under set at 43.5. You know, we got a whole lot of nothing to worry about here when we're talking about the Texans. Rodrigo Blankenship, kicker news here. He is out for sure in this game. But as we look through this, Davis Mills, he basically threw 312 and 3 touchdowns without an interception to the Patriots last week. Other than that, can't really trust him. Don't start him. Do yourself a favor. Brandon Cooks, even though we've seen Davis Mills have success, it wasn't Brandon Cooks that benefited. He had just 3 for 23. It was Chris Moore. It was Chris Conley. Both these guys had 84 and 109 yards respectively. And Brandon Cooks, you know, I feel like you could probably start him in your flex and hope for the best. So that's where I'm going to kind of recommend him there. And when you talk about this running back, maybe David Johnson has the most appeal because the Texans have been playing from behind. Game script dictates they want to get passing. David Johnson is the better catcher of the ball of all these running backs. He's seen 4+ targets and 3+ catches in 3 of the 5 games this year. And the Colts are allowing not a whole lot of work for running backs, especially in the passing game, but I think it's going to be the only option that the Texans are going to have. Jonathan Taylor, we mentioned that game against the Ravens. He got going again, 31.9 fantasy points, 169 scrimmage yards, 2 touchdowns. Things seem to be getting right with him. And Marlon Mack is still playing a factor in there. We don't know what Nyheim Hines is. I think Marlon Mack's going to continue to see some repetitions there at the running back position as they continue to showcase him for potential suitors here up before the trade deadline. Now, when we're talking about the Houston Texans, they're giving up the 7th most rushing yards per game, 112.4 to running backs. They're also giving up about 24.5 fantasy points to that position as well, mostly because the game script has kind of dictated that all year. Carson Wentz, best game of the season for him last week, 402 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Ravens. But the Texans held Mac Jones and the Patriots to about 231 passing yards and 1 touchdown last week. So something to keep in mind there. I'm not starting Carson Wentz. I don't feel comfortable. Maybe the 2 QB league you're forced to put him there with some bye weeks this week. Michael Pittman, yeah, let's fire him up. Let's fire Michael Pittman up. He has 6+ catches and 11 fantasy points in 4 straight games after being pretty much quiet the first little bit there. And the Texans have given up some points there. Not very many, but there's an opportunity to pass the ball on him. Zach Pascal, not going to worry about him. Paris Campbell, never. Now, T.Y. Hilton is interesting for me. You're not starting him. Can't start him. He's coming off a neck injury. He returned to practice this week. But, man, is there someone who's owned the Texans more than T.Y. Hilton has? I think not. Man, yeah, no, sorry, no, don't listen to me. Don't start Hilton. You can't do it. Jack Doyle, no, forget about that. You're not starting him in this matchup either. Some other games here we're going to whip through where we've got a handful more here to cover. We're going to head to Cleveland to talk about this Arizona Cardinals versus Cleveland Browns game in which the Cardinals are actually underdogs heading into Cleveland with the point spread set at 49. This is potential to be a huge game offensively speaking as far as fantasy points are concerned. We heard Nick Chubb is now out. Nick Chubb, he's out of your starting lineups. That means you are firing up Kareem Hunt. There is no question about it. He has potential to be the RB1 this week. Baker Mayfield is a solid QB2. And then you look at Odell Beckham. I'm sorry, you can't put Odell Beckham in your lineups. Yeah, I know of some lineups I'm forced to do it. Put him as a flex, put him as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. Man, he had such a good first week coming back from that injury with that 5 for 77 stat. But since then, it's been not a whole lot. It's been tough sledding. And the Cardinals are giving up the 14th most fantasy points at 39.3 to wide receivers this year. And there's really no other options for Baker Mayfield to find in the passing game outside of Odell Beckham. So it's really a catch-22. It's hard to predict this. I'd rather you avoid this situation at all costs. Same as David Njoku. I think this is some sort of a trap for him. He caught 7 catches, 111 yards last week in the touchdown. He had nothing really before that. So I can't trust him. He's not going in my lineups either. For the Cardinals, Kyler Murray, you got to start him. It is what it is. DeAndre Hopkins, when he's healthy, he can be one of the best in the game. AJ Green might have him and Rondale Moore kind of some flex appeal, maybe some sleeper appeal. Christian Kirk, he's been a tough one here as well because, he managed 5 catches for 39 yards last week, which gives him about 10 or few fantasy points in 3 of the 5 games. He's a huge boomer bust here for me. We heard Zach Ertz was coming to the desert now as Max Williams is basically going on the IR with that knee injury. So that's something to keep in mind in the future. But right now, there's no tight end for the Arizona Cardinals against the Cleveland Browns. Now we head to the Mile High City there. We talk about the Denver Broncos as they are playing host to the Las Vegas Raiders. And they are the 4.5-point favorites with an over-under set at 44. You know that the Raiders have been banged up. Josh Jacobs has been limited for a good chunk of the season. That's pretty much who he is at this point. You know that Darren Waller is going to get his veterans rest. Casey Hayward did not participate on Friday. And then when you look at the Denver Broncos, Melvin Gordon was limited again. So are we going to see a little bit more of Javonte Williams? I don't know. We didn't see as much as I thought we would see last week. Cortland Sutton, he had that ankle injury. He was full practice all week this week. And you know what? He just put up like 7 catches for 120 yards last week. I'm not even going to bet against him, except the Raiders defense has been pretty good. We'll get on that in a second here. But when we talk about Derek Carr, he's got to get back on track. He started out gangbuster here to start the season. Last 2 games haven't been there. Maybe Joey Bosa was right. Maybe you can get inside his head. Denver has held quarterbacks in 4 straight games to less than 20 fantasy points. But Ben Roethlisberger, he did average 10 yards per attempt last week against him. Darren Waller, you're starting him, no question about it. But you got to feel it's just I'm hoping for a Mark Andrews-esque breakout game for Darren Waller. We haven't seen that yet. We've seen the targets in week 1, but since then, it doesn't seem like Waller and Carr can get on the same page. Now, Hunter Renfrow seems to be the guy for the Raiders. I think you start him every week as that underrated wide receiver 3 there. 5+ catches, 45+ yards, 10+ fantasy points in each of the 5 games that Vegas has played so far. And when we look at it, James Prochet, he had 5 for 74 against the Broncos back in week 4. Henry Ruggs, boomer bust. He is a poor man's Marquise Brown right now. Marquise Brown had 4 catches for 91 yards against the Broncos back in week 4. Henry Ruggs hasn't had 10 or more fantasy points in 3 of the 5 contests so far. And Carr's not really looking for him. Brian Edwards, same thing. Can't start him, don't start him. Josh Jacobs, snap share. It is going up, 52 to 63 to 69. Those touches are going up from 11 to 18 to 19. The yardage is also rising with that. And here's the thing. He is actually getting involved in the passing game. So I think you start Josh Jacobs this year. And when you look at what the Broncos gave up last week to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Najee Harris had 23 carries for 122 yards and a rushing touchdown. I think Josh Jacobs is a guy you can start this week. Now for the Broncos, I really think the Vegas Raiders defense has been playing really good, both against the run and against the pass. They are much better than what they've previously been. You look at what they've held receivers to all year. Last week, for example, Allen Robinson, 4 catches, 32 yards. Mike Williams, 1 for 11. Keenan Allen, they shut him down too. Cortland Sutton, he's getting about 27% of the target share since Jerry Jeudy's been out of the lineup. He's got a couple 24 plus fantasy points games under his belt, plus that 120 yards last week that he picked up. I'm going to start him. I'm not going to like it. Tim Patrick, I'm not starting. And Noah Fant, you got to start him because there's no other options out there, but he's been held below 50 receiving yards in 4 straight games. That is not the consistency that you want in a player. And, he's been no more than a check down option with his ADOT sitting at about 5.8 yards there. So Devonte Williams, he just about had that big touchdown last week, but he didn't. And when we look at Melvin Gordon, he's well below that fantasy point threshold too for what you expect from them. I mean, the way the Raiders defense has been playing, the Bears combined for 139 and 1 touchdown last week, 140 yards essentially. That's not something I really want to plump into my lineup between 2 guys still splitting those carries. If I had to choose one or the other, it'd probably be Javonte Williams, but I wouldn't like it. Now, my game of the week, the Los Angeles Chargers head to the Baltimore Ravens. Expect all kinds of offense here. We've got the Ravens favorite as 2.5 points here right now. We got the over-under set of 51.5. You know what? Mike Williams is an injury you want to be paying attention to here on Friday. Did not participate Wednesday, did not participate Thursday, did not participate on Friday. Definitely got to keep an eye on that knee injury. I think he still finds a way to play. And is it any coincidence that Rashad Bateman gets activated and Sammy Watkins all of a sudden is unavailable for the next game? He is out? I think not, but you know what? We'll go there another day. When we talk about the Chargers, everyone got involved last week. You know, we just talked about Mike Williams against the Raiders and how little work that he did there, 1 catch for 11 yards. He came out and he had 8 catches for 165 and 2 touchdowns against last week against the Browns. He's now got 9 or more targets, 7 or more catches, 80 or more yards, 1 or more touchdown, and 22 or more fantasy points in 4 of 5 games. And last week, Michael Pittman, 6 catches, 89 yards, 1 touchdown. So Mike Williams is definitely a fire up here. Keenan Allen, you're going to fire him up as well. He's kind of moved into that number 2 role for the Chargers in the passing game. I think that's still going to be very successful. I think there's points to still be had there. He's still getting the targets. He's getting about 8 a game. But yet he hasn't cracked that 20-point threshold yet this year. And we're waiting for him to get some more touchdowns. But Mike Williams keeps taking them all. That being said, you're starting him. Jared Cook, Donald Parham, not going to get in on that. I'm not going to start either one. I'm not comfortable doing that. And Austin Eckler, you're going to start him because this is going to be one of those games I think is going to be points galore. I think Austin Eckler is going to have a huge role in this game And, you know, we look at this. He's been good the last few games there, and his fantasy points are rising. He's coming off a game here in which Jonathan Taylor just beat the crap out of the Ravens there for in rushing and receiving and got involved every which way. Austin Eckler does all that and does it better. So fire up Austin Eckler this week. As far as the Ravens are going, Lamar Jackson, maybe the best player, maybe the MVP. We've seen what he did last week. He may have had like an 85% completion percentage. He threw for 442 yards. He accumulated 502 yards of offense by himself. You're starting him. Even against this Chargers defense that's good against the pass, it's not going to matter. We thought they were good against the run. Don't worry about it. Start him. Marquise Brown, you have to start him every week. He's a big play waiting to happen. Last week against Colts, 9 catches, 125, 2 touchdowns. You're going to put him in there. Anytime he touches the ball, it's going to be a big play. Rashad Bateman, I want to start him so bad, but I'm going to say hold off on him this week. Let him get used to it. I mean, it can't be hard to get more than 35 yards in a game, so it won't take him long to surpass Sammy Watkins as far as production is concerned. And you have to expect Mark Andrews to have fewer points this week than last week, because last week, 11 catches, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, 13 targets. You can't sustain that, can he? Well, we've been waiting for him to have the break again. He finally got right, and the way the tight end position is going right now, it's about time that we get something going. Oh, and that David Njoku, who hadn't done anything all season, he busted out against the Chargers last week for 7 catches, 149 yards, and a touchdown. The run game for the Ravens, you expect this run game to get going against the Chargers, who have one of the worst run defenses in the league. However, you're dealing with Latavius Murray as the lead back. This is not a situation that you want to get into. Tyson Williams? No. Le'Veon Bell? No. Devonta Freeman? No. It's not going to matter. I know a lot of people out there are saying right now, the Ravens are going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. They're going to slow the clock down against the Chargers. I don't think they're going to be able to do that because this run game is not very good. Now, Dallas, New England. A lot of people are looking forward to this. This is America's team versus the Patriots, or Patriots, maybe the Patriots are Americans team now. Who knows what's happened over the last few years, but the Cowboys are 3.5-point favorites. The over-under is set at 50. No major injuries to really concern yourself about. Elliott was limited on Wednesday and Thursday, so he was questionable. Same with Randy Gregory. The one I'm watching on here the most is Damian Harris. He is questionable. He was DNP on Wednesday, limited on Thursday, limited on Friday. I think this is one of those questionable takes that when it comes down to game time, he is not going to be available. So make sure you're keeping an eye on that as the week progresses. Now, as far as Dak, you're starting him. You have to start him. There's no other way to put it. You know, against the Patriots, Davis Mills went for 312 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dak is no Davis Mills, but he's pretty good himself. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. You know what? Let's get these guys going again. I think this is one of those get right games for these receivers here right now. Maybe they both have very productive games. When we take a look at what they've done here recently, maybe even take a step back to what the Patriots, when they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers week before might be the best comparison. Mike Evans, 7 catches, 75 yards. Antonio Brown, 7 catches, 63 yards. Good, solid production for the duo. I think you can expect something very similar, if not better, for CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. Start them both. Dalton Schultz, you're starting him. He's that tight end right now. We've seen a split between him and Blake Jarwin, pretty even throughout the season here. I don't think you're going to have to worry about Blake Jarwin. So you're going to start Dalton Schultz because he's been effective in the games that he's had. And he's definitely the guy you want to get in your lineup if we're talking about these two tight ends. And I think he's going to still have top 12 production when it's all said and done, because with the buys and the injuries and, quite frankly, how bad the tight end position's been, you could do a lot worse. Ezekiel Elliott, 20-plus points, 110-plus scrimmage yards, 20-plus touchdowns, 1+ touchdown in each of the last 3 games. Zeke is starting to eat, so keep him going on. In Tampa Bay, Week 4, the Patriots surrendered 92 rushing yards and 47 receiving yards to Leonard Fournette. Keep that in mind when Zeke decides to start eating in this one. Tony Pollard, you know what? Fire him up too, because he's going to have some opportunities to get some plays here. I think this is going to get very positive game script for the Cowboys as this game progresses. Mac Jones, can't start him, rookie against the Dallas Cowboys. I know Terrace, he's kind of said that he's up for 300 yards, a couple touchdowns. It's possible. It really is. But when you look at everything that's kind of transpired here in the last little while, the Cowboys have given up about 290 yards in each game. I can't see Mac Jones getting there. I really don't, especially the last weeks. He's been kind of on that decline. However, Jacoby Myers, I think, is a sneaky play. Go figure. I say Jacoby Myers is a play. I say Jacoby Myers is a play every week. He's led the Patriots in wide receiver routes with 31, targets with 5, catches with 4, and yardage with 56 last week. But his target share did dip a little bit below there, 17% in that game. Now, when we look at what the Cowboys are doing, they faced the third most targets at 24.2. And I think there's an opportunity for Jacoby Myers and the Patriots to keep getting those targets in there, keep getting those passing yards. They're going to have to pass if they want to get this game going, especially if Damian Harris is not available for this contest. That said, Jacoby Myers isn't the only guy that lines up in the slot. You got Hunter Henry, you got Jonnu Smith. Last week, Evan Ingram, he's posted against. When you look at this, the Cowboys game is itself. Evan Ingram had 4 catches for 55 yards against the Cowboys. Hunter Henry has been playing really well lately, and he's definitely passed Jonnu Smith when it comes to routes and snaps and everything you're looking at there. So Hunter Henry, I think, is a guy you can play. And if Damian Harris is out, Ramondre Stevenson, I think, is the guy who benefits the most. He only had 11 carries for 23 yards rushing last week, but my boy Major, he's big on Ramondre Stevenson. So maybe it's time to get him involved here a little bit more in this offense. Only got 2 more games left. 2 more to go. I'll have to find a way to clean this up to make it a lot quicker here. But when we look at the next game, we're heading to Pittsburgh. We've got the banged up Seattle Seahawks who are down Russell Wilson, who's on IR. He won't be back till week 10. You got Chris Carson, who's injured as well. Pete Carroll, coaches speak Friday, basically said they're not ruling out Chris Carson to the IR. Pittsburgh is a 5.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 43. It hasn't been good. DK Metcalf, he was also a non-participant today. He's questionable with the foot. Expect him to play. Bobby Wagner was limited. Expect him to play as well. And on the Steelers side, we know Juju Smith-Schuster, he's out for the year with that shoulder injury. James Washington suffered a bit of a groin strain there last week. But other than that, the only one I'm even looking at here a little bit is that little bit of a hamstring injury that kind of limited Chase Claypool both Wednesday and Thursday, but he was a full participant on Friday. Now, when we look at this, Geno Smith, I just talked about him. You'll hear me. We'll talk about him more on my Sunday night preview. He came in and was 10 of 17 for 131 yards, was able to move the ball in a small sample size last week in relief of Russell Wilson. Teddy Bridgewater last week, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you got to temper expectations for Russell Wilson. And when it comes to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, you're starting both of them. You're obviously not starting Geno Smith, but you're starting both Lockett and Metcalf and hoping one of them hits. We haven't had them both hit all season. Last week, Cortland Sutton went off for 7 catches, 120 yards, and 1 touchdown against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's an opportunity for one or both Metcalf and Lockett to get involved here. Geno Smith is giving Metcalf about 18% target share in that small sample size. Lockett's getting about 24% of that target share. We'll see how that shapes out. But when we look at some of the other games, we know Cortland Sutton had a big game. Randall Cobb had a good game in week 4, 5 catches, 69 yards, and 2 touchdowns out of the slot. Seattle likes to move their receivers around. You don't know necessarily it's going to be Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf or even Freddie Swain playing out of the slot, but someone's going to be in the slot. And I think that's where the production is going to come out of in this game. Obviously, you're not going to trust Alex Collins. The only thing Alex Collins is good at, better than in running backs at, is at Riverdance, and we're not having a Riverdance competition here in Pittsburgh, so Alex Collins is a non-factor for me. For the Steelers, I'm not starting Ben Roethlisberger. He could be sneaky QB2. I still don't trust him. I think he's too old. I've seen the film doesn't look very good, but you're going to start Najee Harris, who's coming off the first 100-yard running game for a Pittsburgh running back since October of last year when James Conner did it. I think against Arizona, maybe. I don't have the numbers or the facts right in front of me, but it's been a long time since the Steelers had a running back rush for 100. Najee Harris did it. I think he's going to have the opportunity to do it again because the Steelers, they haven't been very good against the run at all. So make sure you get that Najee Harris in your lineup. As far as Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, I think you got to put them both in. Chase Claypool, I think, is the guy who benefits the most with the Juju Smith-Schuster injury. I think you're going to see him play a little bit of a big slot role, which I think is going to be fantastic for him. Last week, he had 5 catches, 130 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 6 targets. He had that big 24% target share. And Deontay Johnson didn't get the targets. He only had about 2 targets, but he did make 72 yards and a touchdown out of them. And so he had that one big play against the Broncos. Now, James Washington, you're not starting him. He's got that tweaked groin, so don't worry about that. As we move along here, we've also got one more game, Monday Night Football. Bills are heading over to Tennessee to take on the Titans. This game could get ugly really quick. You got the Buffalo Bills offense / their defense. If you look at the point differential in the league right now, the Buffalo Bills have about 108 points plus in the positive. That is way far ahead of any other team. I think the Cardinals may be the next closest team, and I think they're about 43 points back of the Bills when it comes to this category in particular. Now, a closer look, injury report. Emmanuel Sanders, he's healthy. He did not participate on Friday, a little bit of a veteran presence day, a rest day, so to speak. And then Matt Milano, hamstring limited. I'd be surprised if he played. He missed last week. He's going to need to play against the Titans. On the other side, A.J. Brown, he came back from a hamstring injury last week. Did not do a whole lot, about 38 yards against the Jaguars. Julio Jones makes his return to Tennessee. And maybe Ryan Tannehill can finally get back on track as far as his passing offense goes, because it hasn't done a whole heck of a lot, especially when you consider Julio Jones has missed 2 games and he's still the wide receiver 1 for the Titans. Now, as far as Josh Allen, you're firing him up. Last week, Trevor Lawrence had 273 yards and a touchdown against Tennessee. Josh Allen is way better than Trevor Lawrence. He's the QB4 when it comes to fantasy points this season. Look for a big game for Josh Allen. And this is one of those get-right games for Stephon Diggs. He hasn't had that big game. If you catch my Monday night preview, I break it all down. He goes from basically first in targets, first in receiving yards, first in every other category last year to 9th, 15th, 16th, 25th when it comes to fantasy points, 29th in fantasy points per game. That has been a huge dip. But the Titans secondary, good news for him and for Emmanuel Sanders. They've given him a league-high 47.3 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. So you can fire up Diggs, fire up Emmanuel Sanders. He's the wide receiver 25 when it comes to fantasy points. He has at least 13 fantasy points in 3 straight games. He's got 4 touchdowns on the season. The only player on the Bills who's got more receiving touchdowns than him is Dawson Knox, which is a must start as well. You're firing him up. Cole Beasley, don't trust him. 2 games, 13 plus targets. The other games, he's got 2 targets, and 4 targets. You're not starting. You're not even thinking about putting him in, not even as a sleeper. And like I said, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary. Zach Moss, you might be able to get a little bit of a run in there. You got about 74% of the snaps as opposed to Devin Singletary's 26. So it looks like this is turning into Zach Moss's backfield the last couple of weeks, something to keep in mind. And Dawson Knox, like I said, you got to start him because of the way this position is filled out. Thanks for paying attention. Thanks for listening. That's 45 minutes. Hopefully you got some facts and stats there and some information to kind of lead you here as you're setting your lineups this week. Make sure to jump in the comments. Send me your questions on Twitter at MattDonnellyFF. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Check out the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast every Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern, and head over to fantasypoints.com. Enter promo code 21Vipers10. Get 10% off your subscription over there. And It's a one-stop shop. Like I said, it's the place you want to go for all your fantasy football information. fantasypoints.com. Till next time, see you next week.